Greetings. Welcome to day 2 of 30 Days of Halloween. You might be wondering why I'm using the term Halloween. And some of you might be thinking, why aren't you using the term Samhain? Because aren't you a witch, and isn't Samhain the name for Halloween? Well, I must inform you, no, Samhain and Halloween are two different things. Samhain is actually a Gaelic word. It is a word used by the ancient Celts for, it translates to something like the end of summer, is what it really means, literally. And it was one of the 4 major festivals of the Celtic year. And I'm talking about Celtic, not Celtic, not the basketball team, the Celtics. The word is Celtic. And they spoke Gaelic. This is the Gaelic word, and these are predominantly, we're talking about predominantly people living in Scotland, Ireland, and the Isle of Man. Okay. The festival itself was to celebrate the end of summer, like I said, but to celebrate the harvest. And it was not a day in the calendar, it was a time of the year, but it usually came around the same time. And usually, because their calendars weren't really what their calendars are today, but it came around the 31st of October. Okay, let's say that's where 31st of October, which now we celebrate Halloween. But the festival itself actually began. Usually, they started the festival of Samhain around when the sun went down on the 31st until the sun went down again on the 1st, the next, so it would be a full 24 hours, okay? And during that 24 hours, this is the final harvest of the year. Also the livestock were all gathered back from the pastures or from down in the mountains, wherever they were, up in the hills, and they would slaughter those animals that they could not keep through the winter. Okay, they couldn't keep them all. They weren't able to feed, and they weren't going to be able to be out pasturing. So they had to, the ones that they could keep, they provided shelter for, and the ones they could not keep over the winter, they would slaughter. And that was a lot of slaughtering. So it took a lot of people. So a lot of people coming together, helping with the chores of the slaughter, helping with the preparations of the food for keeping through the winter, the drying of the food, the making things, etc. Now, some of the parts of the animal could not be eaten, could not be saved. Like, for instance, the offal, particularly the organ meats or the intestines, those kind of things, the brains, perhaps. They were too delicate. They couldn't be dried or smoked like some of the other parts of the animal. So they needed to be eaten right away. So they would do all the work, and then they would have these great feasts and great, celebration and getting together, because this was probably another time, one of the last gatherings that they would have for the year. Okay, so they would they would also have big fires. They would build big fires and use those to burn the remnants of the crop, to burn the bones of the animals that they slaughtered, and they used those for ceremonial fires as well. In cleansing, they thought it was cleansing, with cleansing and pure protection. They offer the fires was protection. They would sometimes take the cattle through the fires. They did it particularly at Beltane, but they also, I want to say that they also believed this time of the year, I've mentioned before, the veil was very thin between the worlds. And so they were able to maybe see spirits and maybe see the fairies, okay? Now, they were, they believed that along with the good spirits and the good fairies, there were the ones that were not so good. The ones that would maybe cause the mischief, particularly like those deceased people who might have had a grudge to bear. And so they wanted to protect themselves from those people. So one of the ways to protect themselves was to wear costumes. They formed costumes out of straw and things, and to disguise themselves so that they wouldn't be recognized maybe by someone who had passed on that was maybe out for revenge. So you can see that's the similarity between our Halloween today, where the idea of wearing costumes. Okay, so part of it was for ceremony, but also part of it was for, safety is a little bit of a precaution. Okay, so they would tell stories and they would have all kinds of, celebrations and things. And they then would make sacrifices to these spirits, or they could think maybe they weren't just spirits, some of them were maybe some of their gods. And they could offer food and drink to them. And what happened was, around 800, I think the year was 600 AD, 600, and Domini, the Pope Boniface the Fourth, decided, these pagan festivals were not so cool. Now, there's some people who say, oh, they didn't take them from the pagan, they didn't take anything from the pagans. Well, okay, let's say it was a coincidence that Pope Boniface just thought, what would be a good thing to do on October 31st is to have a special day that we called All Saints. We'll call it All Saints Day, or maybe All Hallows Day. No, they had it on the 31st to celebrate the saints. Okay. And the day before, that was on November 1st, yes, November 1st. And the day before, they would call it All Hallows Eve. And then Pope Gregory moved the All Saints Day to November 1st. Because that would take care of any Samhain celebrations. Coincidentally. I'm not going to say they were trying to inconvenience the pagans and their festivals, but it was a coincidence that they thought that was a good time for their All Saints Day. Okay. That ultimately led to, and we called it All Hallows Day, All Hallows Eve, Halloween. So what does this difference between Samhain and Halloween mean to us witches? It shouldn't mean anything to us, really, if you think about it, because we're free to celebrate both Samhain and Halloween, and many of us do. I do myself every year. I celebrate Halloween, and I celebrate Samhain. Two different celebrations for me. But what this video is really going to be about, it's not so much the differences. When I take my 30 days of Halloween, of course Halloween here is the 31st, as well as Samhain. But those of us who are decorating and getting ready, most of our decorations do not have to do with Samhain. Most of our decorations have to do with Halloween. It's the time of the year when we are enjoying that harvest. Okay? Which Samhain, yes, is a harvest time, but the season of Samhain does not come until the beginning, until Samhain, and then following to Yule. That's the final harvest, okay? We're still very much in Mabon, but we can prepare for our mundane Halloween. Okay? That's very, you can do whatever you want, but it's really enjoyable, and that's what this is about, the 30 days of Halloween celebration. But what this particular video is about is not so much making a big difference about it, but I want to say, let's have a little bit of fun, and let's put the witchiness back into Halloween. And rather than keeping it completely separate, let's celebrate the fact that we are witches during Halloween, during this time, and embrace our witchiness. And that's what I want to do today. I'm going to show you one way we can do that. If you looked at if you follow the link below in the description box, you will see a video that I did a while ago that like the second half of the video talks about I think the video is called "Is Halloween the New Christmas?" But it talks about Halloween decorations that I came upon in, I think, a Michael's or something like that last year probably, which I was at a loss to even figure out what it was. And one of them, I thought maybe I had it, I could show it in this video, but we threw it away. After I made the video, we threw it away. Because what it was a jar, supposed to be a witch's representing witches' potions. And you know what I talk about. You see them all the time. And you see all the time on Pinterest, I think, or here on YouTube, people showing you tutorials how to make a jar looking like a potions jar or whatever, witch's jar, and writing things on the front of the jar. And that's cool, isn't it cool? Well, it's very fine for a Halloween decoration. This is where I'm kind of drawing the line here. It's fine for a Halloween decoration, but that particular bottle, you know, when I bought it, I thought, well, at least I could use it, because I was trying to make an example of the bottle. And then when I got it home, I realized that it was not even a real bottle. It didn't have any, it couldn't be used as a real bottle. The material was weird. I was afraid it would shatter. It didn't have, the cork in it was completely glued in, and I don't think the mouth would have even taken a real cork or any kind of a lid or anything if I wanted to use it to store anything real in it. It was just a really piss poor example of a bottle. But plus the fact it said something like, I believe, witch's brew or potion or something on the label. Which we all know as witches, we're famous for having bottles in our cupboards that say witch's potion or witch's brew. I mean, it's so juvenile. I just find it really juvenile. When we as witches have some really fascinating things in our cupboards. In the beginning of that video that I'm referencing, it talks about a poem that is in Macbeth, in the play Macbeth, the Shakespearean play Macbeth. The opening scene of where the witches, the three witches are gathered, and they are saying the famous poem, the famous lines, talking about where they talk about the eye of newt and the toe of frog and those things. And I explained in that video, I've used that quote several times in videos here on my channel, but I did explain in that a very good explanation. I recite the whole little part, and I explain what it is that they're saying and how funny I thought it was. That people find that very frightening, and that's supposed to be scary, and that's like they always depict it with these hags, these horrible, ugly witches, hags, spitting out these lines like they're saying really vile things. And what they're talking about is simply eye of newt is mustard seed, etc. The idea that the witches, the women, the wise women they were that lived within the villages or wherever, they were the healers, they were the midwives, they had kept all kinds of herbs and things and for use in potions, to healing potions and salves and things. Well, yes, they very well could have done spell work with them. I'm not sure if they did or not, but they could have. If they understood the properties well enough, they possibly could. I think I would if I had been one of them. But they understood the magical properties and the beneficial properties, health, healing properties of some of these things. So they had real things. But they did, this is how they made their livelihood, and they weren't going to give away all their secrets by just writing down all the recipes, if they could write. Writing down all the recipes, probably could not write, and calling things by their botanical name. I mean, that's just sort of silly. If you would look up any plant, like mustard seed, something you could look up as spice, mustard, or canned mustard, you will see, especially in some herbal books, the other folk names that is all common names that has also been called, and there you will find that eye of newt is something that was called that. As a matter of fact, I wanted to find it for you. Excuse me. I have I printed out a really handy little article here that talks about how you could come up with names, how some of these things could be named. And it talks about anytime, according to the part of the plant that is used, okay? When such as a blossom or a seed of the plant is that which is used, in the case of mustard seed, they name it as the eye. They will call it the eye. If they call it, or they will call it the heart, okay? Especially if it's a bud, they might call it the heart. If they use the, they could call it the beak. They could call it the nose or the bill. They could call it a petal or a leaf of the plant that they use. They could call the tongue. They might call it the tongue. If it's a spiky leaf, they might call it the teeth. If it's sharp, they might call it teeth. If they use the blossom, they might call it the head. Or if they use the stem, they might call it the tail of whatever. Okay? The stringy parts or the dried parts or just the stringy parts of the plant might be called the hair of something. Okay? If they use the sap of, or they might call it the privates or the genitals or the semen. Okay? It is their own secret recipe, so to speak, their names, so that they don't, without, just anybody could make these potions. They would have no need for these women, and that's how they have the status within the community. So this is really cool. And then it goes on, it talks about the plant names. If they were animals, they might use sage as a toad, grasses, particularly grasses for dog, white garlic or laurel could be a blue jay, a wild lettuce could be a lamb. Okay, so they have these really cool names that they would use. Okay, some of them still very commonly used today. We call comfrey is often called ass ear. Poppy is often called blind eye. Chamomile is often called blood of Hestia. Foxglove, bloody fingers. Snapdragon, calf snout. Ground ivy, cat split. You might have heard some of people, especially like your grandmother, somebody using some of these older names. Devil's plaything, yarrow is called devil's plaything. So there's some names. There's different kinds of names. This goes on and on. This goes really on and on of this. So I thought that was. I've done things in the past with some of my plants, and I've told you before, I think when I very first introduced you to dodder, I told you the dodder is often called bindweed, is it called bindweed? It's called strangleweed, or it's called devil's hair. Very often, very common name for the dodder. So you can find these, especially in older herbal books or books that reference the history of the herbs. They will tell you some of those names. So if you want to make some of your jars that you already store in your cupboard into something really, really cool, this is something that you can do. I'm going to show you just some real quick fixes. If you want to do more elaborate things, you can go on Pinterest and look, or you can go anywhere on YouTube. Just do a search on YouTube for apothecary jars or whatever, Halloween, and they'll give you some ideas. But I'm going to do some real quick fixes. And what I want to show you right now is what I'm going to use, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to alter these a little bit and make them a little more cool looking, and I'm going to show you what I did to them. Okay, you've seen some of these jars before that I've used. This one I just used the other day when I did the magical chalk, and this is the jar that I keep inside graveyard dirt. Okay, it does its trick. It serves its purpose, graveyard dirt. But maybe this is something that I don't really want to show, the graveyard dirt. Maybe I should have this in a maybe darker bottle or something like that. I like the size of the bottle. I can get my hand in there. I like the size of the jar. So I'm going to alter that a little bit and show you what I come up with. This is a jar that I keep, something that's real. It's very real. And I don't even know another name for it. It's dragon's blood, which I use in incense all the time. And again, I just have this in I don't know what kind of a jar this is. I want to say, is this that's my husband. What was in this jar, Joe?
Roasted red pepper.
Roasted red pepper?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yes.
In this jar, we keep these jars. I love the square jar, and the lid fits on there so nice. It's just a really nice size. And I always keep dragon's blood in here. But this isn't a very, it's not a very fun, way to store my dragon's blood. I can maybe do a little better than that. Okay. I found another jar that was just, that we tend to keep all of our jars because we store a lot of things. Particularly this kind of a jar. My husband's been trying for weeks and weeks to get this, like there's some kind of glue residue. It's smooth, but you can see it. It makes it very cloudy. Some places of the glass are very cloudy, and it really bothers him. So we haven't used this jar, but I might be able to alter this jar to store some of my things from my cupboard in, and this is a really good candidate. And something that we have, and then my fourth and final one that I'm just going to show you is this. We eat these by the ton. I have this. At any given time, I might have jars and jars. This is garlic stuffed olives, which we eat a lot of times in our salads, but we also just like to eat them. But also, I use we when the jar is empty, we save the juice. My husband will drink it if he gets life cramps, but I would drink it if I want a Bloody Mary. I make my Bloody Marys dirty, so I use the brine of olives to make my Bloody Marys nice and dirty. And so this is we have this kind of jar all the time, and this is a nice candidate to try to do something with for Halloween. So I'm going to just take these 4 jars, and I'm going to alter them, and then I'm going to tag that on to this video and show you what they look like when I'm all finished. Okay, so be right back. I think it's an improvement. What do you think? Here is the jar that I used for graveyard dirt that I had. It was just a plain jar. This is the same jar, and I can show you what I have. I painted the jar black, and I added some embellishments to it. I added a label. I found a label. These labels are all over Pinterest and all over Google. You can find all kinds for free that I just copied, and then I sized it to fit my jar. What I did with this one is I tore it around the edges a little bit rather than just cut it out, and then I wet it a little bit to sort of break down that edge a little bit to make it more worn, made it look a little more worn. And then I took a little bit of, I was using a little bit of black paint, not black paint, brown paint, which I will show you, I'll show you to come. And I just aged it a little bit more than it was to try to blend in those edges and make it look more authentic. And then I made, this is supposed to be a headstone, rest in peace, R.I.P., and I put fencing around the perimeter of the jar. And the fencing, you probably, I don't know if you can see it, but what I like about it is it maybe doesn't look too much like fencing, but it is made of hot glue, and I'm going to show you how you can do that to your jars. It's really easy to do, and I like it a lot. It's a little odd because I was limited in the paint that I had. I didn't want to buy paint for it, and I had just some silver paint, which was really shiny. Wood is not really shiny, but it could be an iron fence. It didn't have to be a wooden fence, but of course it's sort of ragged, so it would be wood. I was just looking for gray wood, like, redwood fencing, how it ages. Not maybe redwood, but what do we use in our yard? And how it just ages to that gray, that really lovely gray. And then I just did a little bit of just a little wash on the top with some brown paint, the same brown paint that I used on the label. I put jute around, I did some jute, glued some jute around that little neck here, cover that up. And I added the embellishments that I added. I put an evil eye for protection. I put a little skull that I had, and I have a little bell. The little, the story about, there was a tale that people were spreading, people have been spreading, that people are so afraid to have people bury people alive that they would tie a string to the dead man's, the corpse's toe, and then on a string up above the ground, so that if the dead man came out of his coma or whatever he was in, out of his catatonic state, and moved, the bell would ring and people would know to dig him up before he suffocated. I think that tale has been debunked pretty much. Except I did find a reference to somebody who had a patent, some count who had a patent for a very sophisticated device to prevent people from being buried alive after he heard about a young girl who was nearly buried alive. It had something to do with a very sophisticated system hooking up to the coffin if any kind of movement was made within the coffin. It would release air into the coffin, and it also would ring some kind of a bell, but it wasn't tied to anybody's toe. So I don't know if that's true or not, and we don't use those today. But I'm always kind of afraid of that because, when I was a kid, I think we've all seen movies like that, but I think I saw a trailer for when I was a kid. I looked it up to try to figure out what the movie was. I didn't see the movie. I saw the trailer. And there was a Vincent Price movie in 1962 called Premature Burial. It could have been that movie. That would have put me around 10 years old. I think I'd have been a little more because I lived in a small town. We didn't get movies when they were released. We got them much later. So maybe I was 12 or 13 when I saw the trailer for that, which makes sense. But I remember just being horrified at the very thought of that. And, I think I made up my mind that right then and there I would never be buried. But anyway, so I thought it was appropriate anyway to put a little bell. I have a little bell on my jar. And inside, and coincidentally how the back lid was very cool, and inside there is my graveyard dirt. Now there were labels that said graveyard dirt and graveyard dust that I could have used, but a lot of those had like demonic reference on them, and that's not part of my belief. So I like this one because this one has little crows on the bottom, or ravens. I think these are crows. And it just says Black of Night Cemetery Dirt, which I thought was really appropriate. And so that was this jar. Okay. Next we have the dragon's blood, which I changed. The dragon's blood was in a round jar, and I'm going to show you why I changed. No, I didn't change the jar. I did not change the jar. But the jar originally had on a white lid. Okay, and I could have covered the lid, but I had another jar that I was going to use. I think the jar that I mentioned that my husband could not get that little mist out of, that fit the top. So I put the dragon's blood. I wanted just a lid. I didn't want to cover the lid. So I changed lids, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with this in a little bit. I'm going to alter that for you. And then these are just little beads, and there's some skulls and beads and things on here. These were just elastic bracelets of sort of like a real simple elastic. It was like a side token for a Hallows event that I went to. Me and my husband and I went to several years ago. And I've just kept these little things. How we do keep these little pieces of things. We don't know what we're going to do with them, but we keep them. And then again, this is a label that I found. It says Dragon's Blood, the little dragon. I don't know if you can see that or not. Again, on Google or Pinterest, I think Google. And just really simple. Has a dragon on there. I really like the font. I like that a lot. And since I use this so much, I just wanted to keep it so simple. But I guess it does look, it's very much improved, isn't it? Okay, and this one I like a lot. This was the olive jar that I showed you earlier. And it has been cleaned off. And when we washed it, first of all, I found this label. And I'm going to show you these labels. I found these labels. It was a whole sheet of labels on, again, Pinterest or Google. I'll show you what they look like. And it didn't say anything. They were just blank, and you could write your own things. And I was able to, in Word, I was able to add a text that said Devil's Hair in a font that I really liked. Okay. And I added that to the jar. And then it's sort of hard to see in this light, but you can see probably on the label. I just took some black acrylic paint, very watered down a whole lot, and I just did it like a wash, let it drip down over the jar, because the jar was really severely shiny and bright, and I didn't want it to be shiny and bright, but I wanted it to be clear so you could see the daughter inside. Remember I said that Devil's Hair is another word for daughter. And then I took the lid, so you can see the daughter inside. Then I took the lid, and here we can see it was very much an olive lid. And I'm going to show you how I did that. And I just took some brown paper and I attached it to the lid with a little bit of jute. And I will show you, I'm going to show you how to do that too. So it's real easy to do, okay? And I like the way that came out a lot. That came out really neat. Okay? So that left me with a round jar, one round jar left. Oh, here I want to show you. Oh no, I'll show you in a minute. I'll show you that in a minute. That left me with one more jar left, the jar that I had, that my husband had for the one that was so cloudy that we could not get to. I'm going to show you what I used for paint. I'm going to show you all my materials. And I'm going to show you a little bit of the procedure that I went through. So let me clear this out and make room for my materials. I hope I have everything out that I needed for this project to share with you. I want to make sure you have no. I found these sort of after the fact. I could still use them, but I didn't. These are just, they're called apothecary labels. These came from World Market, actually. 12 sticker labels for labeling bottles and jars. And they're just blank. They're just blanks, you can see. Here's the top. Which would work really good for some of the jars. They're a little big for some of the jars. You have to keep in mind the size. The problem with these, there's no problem with them. But these would actually stick on your jars, so you wouldn't have to worry. And you would just have to write. You would have to write. You couldn't run these through the computer, but you could just write, you know, with a pen or a Sharpie, with a Sharpie, and then leave it as it is, or you know, you could age it a little bit by putting a little bit of, you know, a little wash of some kind of brown paint or something over it. If you wanted to. They're cute though. They're really cute the way they are. One's a bat, spider, skull, and a crow. So they're real. That's an option. I didn't buy these, so I was already finished, and it really wasn't what I wanted to do this time. But I'm keeping them, and I might use them another time. Okay. These are actually the ones that I found, and I found this on Pinterest. It's a whole sheet of just blanks. The disadvantage to this is they're together. You can't take an individual one. So when I printed them out, I was only using two of them. I used the one with the skull and the one with the bats. You're going to see that in a minute. But the one with the skull I used for the devil's hair. This one for the devil's hair. And then the advantage was I could keep this as a Word document, and I could add a text box, and I could add my font, and I could actually, you know, print on here, and then cut those apart, and that was really easily done. And I used that, and then I applied the label to the glass with Mod Podge. If you're not familiar with Mod Podge, get it now early in the month if you're going to do any project, because this is one thing I use a lot. This is something that, and I like this is just a gloss. I think you can get a different kind of gloss or not gloss or whatever. But it's water-based, it's really easy, it's a glue. And you can also, when I did this label that I put on here, the devil's hair, I was going to I glued it on here with the Mod Podge. And then I knew I was going to paint with a wash over it. I was going to, you know, dribble this thing. And water and paper sometimes is not too gentle. So I put a little layer of the Mod Podge on the top of the paper. That's actually what it's for. And so it enabled it to hold up. So when I wet that down, it didn't destroy the paper any more than it was. So this is a really good product to use for that. So that we're going to use in a minute. I'll show you how we're going to use that. But anyway, I just applied labels with that. As far as getting my jars this nice, beautiful black color, this is something that you want to buy if you don't have it. I don't think there's a replacement for this. I have the Rust-Oleum brand. I think there's other brands, but it's chalkboard, actual chalkboard paint. You've seen people do actual chalkboard walls and things in their house for their children to use chalk on, or, you know, to write on, and it's real fun. Or you can make your own chalkboard out of this. But I love this. This went over. All we did, my husband actually did it. He took my jars outside, he put them down, you know, and he turned them upside down, and he just gave it one coat of this chalkboard paint. It's this spray paint, and boy, it covers so beautifully. One coat is all you need, and it covers really. It's lovely, lovely, lovely color. And he did the bottoms. He did not. He didn't do. So he just flipped it upside down and did that. And it's just a lovely finish. You can write on it. If you just want to write on that, you can do that. But if you don't want it with chalk, but if you don't want to write on it, it still makes a really lovely paint. So I recommend, if you're going to buy anything special for the project, of the things that I have here, I really recommend the Mod Podge, and I really recommend this paint. Okay? Okay, so, what else do we need? Well, of course, we have the labels. So after we do the labels, then we're going to have to do maybe, and I use some paints. And I just use, this is my water, because I'm using water-based paints. And these are just some acrylic paints that I had in my stash. Everybody, all of us, if you do any kind of crafts at all, you have some acrylic paints. If you don't, they're really cheap, really affordable. At any craft store, Joann's, Michael's, which you can get online. I don't know if they come at the Dollar Tree or not. I've never bought them at the Dollar Tree, but it's possible. But I just used a little bit of black. I used a little bit of silver. I used a little bit of the brown. This is actually espresso brown to age a little bit. And then I have gold. I'm going to show you what I did with that in a minute. No big deal. Okay. So it's some paint. You will also need a glue stick if you're perhaps, depending on how you want to do your project. I'm going to show you one fun little thing that you might want to do. You use a glue gun or not. This is just one of those, the little mini glue guns. It takes the little sticks. And I don't know what they are. I was just trying to wonder if they're considered cool or not. They used to be called cool, and the other ones, the big ones, are called hot. But they just doesn't say that anymore. It just says they're just little. So I don't know what it is, but glue sticks. I'm going to show you what. We're not going to actually glue things with them, but we're going to use the glue. We're going to use the glue as part of our designing. Oh, I'll show you where. This is what I did when I made the fence. When I added this fence to my cemetery dirt, to my graveyard dirt, because it gives a little bit of texture. It's just a little bit of, if you're interested in that. But I just want to show you how easy it is, because you might not think you are, but when you see how easy it is to do it, you might change your mind. Because it's kind of fun. Okay. So anyway, that's, other than that, let's see what do I need. Oh, I use jute. I use two different kinds. I use the thick jute, just simple jute, for around this neck. And then I use a thinner kind for here. It's just what I had. I just use what I have. I use this for a lot of things. So other than that, toothpicks, because you use toothpicks. I use toothpicks all the time. Yeah, I don't know. I just do. Or I have them on hand. You never know when you need them. I had some here, just regular white glue. I had such a terrible time with glue. My husband and I have a love-hate relationship with glue. No glue ever works for us. It always is clogged. It always is dry. It always doesn't come out right. It always is just stupid. We've wasted so much, thrown so much glue away. It's so hard to keep glue. So I use this. I think I use this to glue the end of my jute down on here. But yeah, I could use any kind of glue. I just tried to use this. Just made me frustrated. And because I was so frustrated with my glue, I have a glass of red wine here because I was going to be frustrated. I have a foam brush because I like to use a foam brush for both applying the Mod Podge and for applying the paint. And I have little brown paper, which I'll talk about in a minute. This came just from a lunch. We call them a lunch bag, a pack. We always buy them a pack of lunch bags, paper bags. This size you would carry your lunch in, like we did when we were kids in school. We have them all the time because my husband, this is what he stores the eggs in after he washes the eggs, before he actually dries the eggs, before he crushes the eggs to give back to the chickens. And then I just have a little pallet. I use the plastic of some kind of a tub. I think margarine or something was in this, like 100 years ago when we used to eat margarine. And I use it for paint all the time. So I think that's all that I needed. Oh, one more thing. Kind of important. If you're going to use the hot glue and you're going to apply these sticks, you would want parchment paper. And I will show you why. Parchment paper. I will show you why in a minute, okay? So, what I have done here is I'm just going to show you the last steps I have taken. I told you that this was the jar that my husband could not get. It was cloudy. He didn't like it, so we went ahead and painted it. And I put this. I got a label, one of the labels, another one of the labels from that sheet that I printed out, and I was able to type a new. What was in it, name the label. It says Catholic Church Dirt. Okay. And part of this decoration involves in the back a cross. And this cross was made the same way as the fence, made of hot glue. And I did that particularly. I wanted to show you how to do that. It's really fun to do. Oh, the reason I wanted to do this for Catholic Church Dirt, this is the jar. I thought you would get a kick out of this. This is a jar that I use now for Catholic, as you can see, Catholic Church Dirt. It's one of those olive jars that I talked about that I have so many of them. It's the same jar as this. It's the same jar as this. Okay, but this isn't so fun. This is not so fun. So that's what we're going to change. I'm going to take that dirt and I'm going to put it in here when I'm finished. Then it's going to be fun. We're witching it up, right? So anyway, I did this little cross in the back, and I'm going to show you just the procedure. It is so easy to do. It's easy and hard at the same time. It's easy because the first thing you need to do is find your image you wanted. And for this, I just wanted a cross. And I originally was going to put 3 crosses around. I was going to put cross, cross, cross. But then when I actually went to put it on, I decided no, I was going to put one. And so I went, my point is, I went originally to, again, to Google or Pinterest or whatever. And I found this page. Oh no, this was actually on a site called Catholic. It was, it was Catholic clip art, which I found really funny. If you know Catholics, like I know Catholics, because technically I guess I'm a Catholic, because I'm still a Catholic. But even though I don't practice the Catholic religion. But Catholics are really bizarre about things. They have to do everything that's like actually Catholic. Like even their clip art has to be like actually Catholic clip art. Like what the hell is that? That's kind of random. But anyway, I was going to do, and I wanted them, I could have free-handed it right on the jar. Some people are able to freehand with the glue right directly onto the jar, but I wanted to make sure my crosses, if I did 3, were going to be the same. So I just went ahead and just copied off 3 because I wanted to check for size. I took the clip art from the internet. I put it into Word, and then I sized it to fit how big I wanted the cross to be to fit on the jar properly. Okay. I did the same with everything else. I sized it properly for my project. Okay. And then what you do, you simply get your parchment paper. Okay. You get a piece of parchment paper. And you put this piece you copy under, and you trace. I'm fighting my fan here, so I'm putting everything so that it is under something. But it's so hot today. I'm not turning off my fan. I'm not turning off my fan. But what I did was I just traced, and this is the cool thing about parchment paper, because you can trace. You can see the design right through it, and just trace it onto the parchment paper. And then I have a nice outline that I can follow. I'm going to place the piece of paper below, and I can follow with my hot glue. I don't know if you can see it or not from this angle. I don't know if you can. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, now if you're going, like when I did the fences, I started out by outlining the fence, and then I wanted to take it, I'm building texture, so if it was supposed to be wood, I would take in the direction up and down for the cross rails, and then up and down for the wood. It didn't really, it sort of turned that way, but it's not, you know, it was kind of weird because it's silver rather than gray. But, but I wanted, you know, when I did it, I wanted to leave it all, I wanted it crude. It didn't really fill in very well, and I wanted it that way. That was what I was going for, so that it was like falling, you know, like in a graveyard, the fence would be maybe falling apart a little bit. So that was what I was going for. Anyway, in here, on this cross that I'm putting on here, I'm really going for it, you know, pretty much going for a solid cross that I'm going to then paint. So I can just kind of fill that in any way I want. Okay. So what I would do is I just take my glue gun. I could start by outlining it if you wanted to, but you want to just use your glue gun, and you want to just, you know, try to follow your lines, your pencil lines. To get an outline. And the cool thing about this project is you don't have to worry about going over the line. And I'm going to show you why. This is why I like this so much. It's really very forgiving. It's a very forgiving project. Okay. And actually for this project, since I want it to be gloppy, I'm just going to fill in. I'm just going to try to fill that in as much as I can. But if you're just going to just draw it, the idea is to add layers of glue. And the cool thing about this heat wave we're having, because I have my fans on, this dries almost instantly. So it's just going to take a second to dry, and then I can put a little bit more on. And what I keep doing is I keep picking it up and looking at it in my light to see what my coverage is. And I can see that I'm missing some places in it that I might want to cover. Since I want this to be pretty much filled, you know, I don't want it to really have missing places. Okay. It's still a little tacky, but it's not hot. With that fan, I'm going to just take a little sip of my wine. You know me. Okay. And I'm just going to fill in my stick's at a funny place. It doesn't want to go down. And again, I'm in this really weird place where the light is just not my friend right now. Okay, so I really have that glopped in. Now, I want to say something. How do you know how much to build up? You don't have to build too much up. On this cross, I kind of built up a little bit more than I needed to, and so I had a little trouble. I didn't have trouble so much, but it was gave me a little bit of challenge to make it stick because the glass was a curve. On this one, I was able to do it thick or thin, it wouldn't matter because I was on a flat surface of the side of the jar. Okay. If I would have done it on this kind of a jar with the flat sides, you know, it would have been really easy to adhere. But because I'm on a curve, it presents some challenges that are unique. Okay. So anyway, I think that's all I want. I don't think I want any more on there. Because I think it's all glued. So I'm just going to unplug that. And as soon as that is dry, I'm going to give it some paint. My cross is cool enough. It's just about dry, so it's cool enough for me to handle. And this is the cool thing about parchment paper. It just peels off. Look at that. It just peels off. It's simple. It was that easy. Okay. Now I can see some places that I really didn't have a lot of glue. That's okay. We're gonna see what happens when I paint it. So I'm just going to, rather than use my palette, I'm just gonna use this piece of paper. I would normally use a palette, but I'm over it at this point. And I'm just going to take, my brush, and I'm just going to start applying some gold paint. I just want to show you what I did for my cross. I'm not, again, going to add another cross to my project. But if I wanted to, this is how easy this is. And I'm not worried, I have some bits of the glue. I have bits of glue that are, I went over the line, whatever. That doesn't matter. It's not going to matter at all. Move that aside to dry. We'll dry just in a second. Again, this fan is fantastic. What is that? This is why I keep toothpicks around all the time. Because I don't like this. There, that was just something laying on there. Oh, that was a string of glue. That's going to be removed. And again, it's just going to take a minute to dry. Just a minute to dry, and that's the end. And when it's dry, then I can just I'm going to add a little bit of the brown on top, just to tone it down a little bit, and add a little bit of dimension to it. Again, that's not necessary. Whoops. Whatever. It's just, that's the way I am. I can't leave things alone. Oh. And what I'm going to do is, since I'm going to add brown to it, I'm going to just tear off a piece of paper towel here. In case I get too much, I want to be able to blot it off right away. So I put it on there, it's a little brown. And then I take it and I just blot. So I leave some, I just wanted to keep some of the shine off of it. Let that dry. Okay, it's dry enough to touch. And now this is the other cool thing that's really about doing these projects. I don't know if you can see this, but I really went over the line. I don't know. It's kind of sloppy. If I were to put this on my project now, look at it. It's a really messy, maybe you can see it on the black. Oops. It's a really, really messy cross. So, but I can still see the pencil lines. The pencil lines are still there, so I'm just taking a little pair of scissors and I'm going to just cut and trim that glue away and keep it nice and straight. Keep nice clean edges to the cross. You see that? You see how I've done that? I don't know if you can see it or not. Just get nice straight edges. As straight as it can be. In some places that I did it a little bit thick, it's a little harder to cut, but you get the idea. It's just, sometimes it's cool to leave the edge. Sometimes it's cool to take it away. It's whatever you want. But it's simple to do. Either way, it's very simple. Okay, so now I have a clean I have a clean cross. And if I was to put this on here, you see the edges are clean. Nice and clean. I hope you can see. I'm putting it against the black, hopefully they'll see. But I'm not going to put it on because I have that one and that's the only one I want. Okay. But this was for you to see. So it's so simple to do. Very, very simple to do. Okay, now I have one thing left to do that I want to show you. I'm just getting this out of the way. Doesn't have that wet paint in there. I just didn't feel like, I've washed so many times, my palette so many times, I didn't feel like doing it again. So anyway, I have this lid, and remember I said that I exchanged lids because I wanted the black lid for this, for my dragon's blood, and so that leaves the white lid that I was going to put on the Catholic Church shirt, and this looks really bad. I mean, have a white lid on that looks really bad. So this is something I want to cover. So I'm going to cover it the same way I covered this one. I want to show you it's a very simple process, and it makes a really big difference. Okay, so I take the lid. I took my brown paper bag, and I drew a circle much bigger than I needed. Not much bigger, but relatively bigger than I needed. And what I did was I just estimated how much I was going to need, because I wanted to have extra here hanging down. So what this is that I just took the lid off how I store my flour for baking. I stored in gallon pickle jars, and it just happened to be on my counter there where I was using for bread. So I had this, and I just used the lid as a template, made a circle, and then I took this lid and I centered it on my template this way, and you can see I still have dragon's blood resin inside my lid. I was going to wash it out, but I thought, oh no, that's a protection. That's a really nice protection for this jar. I'm going to leave it in there. So anyway, and I just centered it on the circle, and I drew around the outside of the lid with my pencil. Before I'm ready to glue this onto the lid, I want to do the same thing that I did to this one. And then I just crumpled it up. I did the same thing to these labels. I don't know if you can tell. You probably can't tell from this shot, but the labels, I crumpled them up a little bit just to give them a little both dimension, a little aging, okay? And then I spread it back out, and then I just take my Mod Podge here, and I want to go and put a pretty generous amount and just sort of dab it in the area inside that circle that represents the perimeter of that lid. It's a pretty generous amount. You don't have to worry about it being too thick. It's very forgiving. Okay. You want to get it down in all the little cracks from where you, okay. So I have it on there, and then I just take my lid. Let me move this out of the way. Hope you can see it. Take my lid and put it back down on the center. Okay. And then I'm going to just take, and I'm just going to start I want to fold the sides in. I'm going to crease them down around that lid. Okay. You'll see why in a minute. Okay, and that's another one of the reasons that we wrinkled the lid up, in the paper up, because we wanted to have it fit nice and snugly to the lid. And I'm even going to take it, and I'm even going to use my finger, the pressure of my finger, to just put it inside, even bend it right down inside, even though we're not going to leave it like that, to get a nice fit, around that lid. We want the paper to just have the memory of segging up to that lip, because we're going to do something. Okay. So when I turn it over, I actually see the paper snugging down to the lid. Okay. So now we're not going to see that white lid at all, are we? It's going to be really nice. And then I take this paper that I just stuck down, and I'm going to pull that back up. Because now because we need to hear that. I'm just carefully lifting that up. And I'm actually going to turn it completely back to reveal the edge, this edge, of the lid. Okay? Because now I have to put some glue on that edge to get that paper to stick. But we've already given it like a little bit of a memory, right? That it can return to. And I'm just going to dab. I'm going to go around the lid. And again, being rather generous and not worrying if I get it on the paper too, because it really kind of is better if it gets on the paper. I don't want to get it inside the lid because I don't want to glue the lid down. But I want the paper and the lid to have a good seal. I want that to stick really well. Hopefully that's good. Okay, I have a lot of glue, so I'm just going to redo what I just did. Put that paper down. Put it against there. And I don't want any inside. I don't want any inside it. So I want to make sure I don't get any inside it. So anything extra I'm going to kind of take off. I don't think I need to, because once it is dry, it's really dry. So I'm just going to hold that up. And again, it dries so fast. It's just like actually minutes. Okay, I'm just going to hold that just for a minute. And then I'm going to, one last step to do before my jar is finished. It's amazing what you can do with some simple things that you have lying around the house. All you need is just a little creativity. And you know what I said about creativity? Boy, you feed your creativity. Oh my goodness, that helps you to get in balance at this time of the year, right? We're in this time of the year where we're trying to keep ourselves into balance a little bit. And as the dark approaches, we want to be well prepared for the darkness as it comes in. So we want to get ourselves in balance. And using our creative energies is one of the best ways I know to do that. I know I always feel better. It's hard for me to be creative when I'm depressed, but it's hard to be depressed. So it's let me say that again. It's very hard for me to be creative when I am depressed. But once I push through that and I push myself into creativity, I find it's really hard for me to be depressed when I'm creative. And I think we can embrace that. I think we can all embrace that kind of a feeling. Okay, so now this is really stuck. You might want to see it's really stuck down to the edge of the lid, and I want to put some twine around it like I did here. So I'm just going to put it. I'm going to put it on the lid, just so I can handle it. And I'm going to take my thin twine. And it's not really a trick to it, but I found that the best way to do this is I'm going to apply the Mod Podge around it, like go completely round, just on the lip, just on that lip. I don't need too much, just enough to hold this little bit of skinny twine down. I hope I'm not drying out my Mod Podge leaving it open like this. I wonder I don't know what it's like to get to the bottom of a jar of glue or a jar of Mod Podge or even the jar, bottom of a jar of paint. You know, I used to paint. I used to be an artisan. Made my living as an artisan. Just a lot of wood crafts and a lot of painting and things. And seriously, even when I was doing it all the time, like up to 20 hours a day or more during some seasons, preparing for certain shows, I seriously never got to the bottom of a jar of paint because it just rots. Okay, the one trick I want to say that I think is the secret is I want to start at the bottom lip of the jar. Instead of starting at the top, I want to put it right along that bottom, right under the lip. Whoops. I want to define that as the edge. I don't want to go any further than that with my twine. Okay? And the edge that I started with, it's going to stay end up. There. And then I just wrap, instead of wrapping it. Another reason I keep the water here, I've got glue. And I'm just going to rinse my hands off in there, so I'm not sticking to anything. This is Ghetto Crafts. This is how I do it. Okay. Okay. But I want my hand to be free. Okay, and then I'm just going to start wrapping up. Going up into that, up into my Mod Podge, above where I am, above that line. Just around and around. And it helps to have it on the jar, but you can pick it up and hold it in your hand if that's cumbersome. However is easiest for you. You want to go rather quickly because your Mod Podge, especially if you have a fan blowing on at full speed like I do. But if you don't, if it dries too fast, you can always just add a little bit more. Woo! It goes on the floor. The cats are going to be down there and getting it. Anyway, this just makes a nice little edge. Having this, a nice little finish to this jar. I hope you can see this well enough. I'm just going to add a little bit of... And the cool thing about it, again, I said about this Mod Podge, is it dries clear. So you can sort of kind of put it on there. And when it dries, you're not going to really see it. I just want to go as far... I don't like to end it right in the front. But wherever I end it, I'm going to put a little Mod Podge on there so that lays down. And there you have it. Whoops. And there you have it. And there you have it. Okay. Let me clean this up and then we'll talk. And here is my finished jar. Catholic Church dirt. It's improvement. There's the cross in the back. I don't know if you think that's improved or not. From the original Catholic Church dirt. An olive jar, just a plain olive jar with a sticker. It's up to you, you know, if you think it's fine to leave it this way. It's been fine for me all this time, but you know what? I have to say that, you know, as I've been, I think it happened, sometimes it happened when I was doing, something happened to me when I was doing the Dragon's Blood. Because the Dragon's Blood was perfectly fine, and the Dragon's Blood was something that I use all the time, and all the time in it. I love Dragon's Blood so much. Then I thought, if I love it so much, maybe I should be more respectful of it. You know, maybe keeping it just in this plain old jar with, you know, this way it's protected, you know, it's inside, it's protected from eyes that don't need to see it, perhaps, or whatever. I have these special little charms on here that mean really a lot to me, you know, this is memory of a really good time that we had, and I don't don't know. I just think it adds to the magic of the item. Whatever it does, it certainly makes it put a little more witchiness in my Halloween. Because instead of me just getting some kind of a fake potion bottle that doesn't even have anything inside it, I can put these out, and if I want to, if anybody sees these, if I want to make a nice display of these, people go, oh, devil's hair, isn't that really cute? That is so cute. Oh, boo, that's so scary. Well, yes, the last laugh, I have the last laugh because, yes, this is scary. This is something that you need to fear, but they don't have to know that. They don't have to know that. So those of you who are in the closet, this is really cool. Put your real things inside. You can still make up your bottles and put them out for display, but isn't it really cool to have stuff in it that's real? Isn't it cool if you really do have graveyard dust or graveyard dirt in your jar that says graveyard dirt? Kind of cool. I don't know. It's kind of cool. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. See you tomorrow. I wish you blessings.